There we go. So I'm just going to tilt it forward, let it run down a little bit. And I'm just going to change my hue of this. I'm just going to cool it off a little bit. Just put a little turquoise in, maybe lighten it up.
Geoff, let's hear about your unique way of picking cloud shapes.
Okay, well, basically, I'm going to be splattering. I learned how to splatter to make natural edges. Splattering does a gazillion things for me. It helps me connect edges, add water, add texture, add saturation. If I want to do a hue shift, I do it then that as well. Usually, when I start off my plein air, I do a little sketch, and so my indoor practice is I practice in the studio for painting outside, and I always feel like I learn something outside that I bring in the studio. And my work now is mostly done plein air, so when I'm in the studio, I try to mimic that experience of painting in plein air. And but you know what Eisenhower said about planning? He said plans are worthless, but planning is essential. So I kind of feel like I get my plan, but I'm always sort of changing it on the way. And I think it's just because the brain needs time to, put the puzzle pieces together. So here's my first effort. And, I do like a continuous line drawing, figure out the format. A lot of times I try to get a diagonal dynamic going. Like this is sort of where all my action is going to be. And I'm just opposing it by this large nothing cloud up here. But I'm going to put a lot of emphasis in that cloud with splatter. So you'll see that. So in these sketches, I like to start off pencil and I kind of get to like a structural sketch, but no detail. I don't like to get too much detail. I don't want to be doing this. Really, I let the scene do that. When I'm starting to paint the scene, I'll look at my reference. My reference today, I have one picture of clouds. I just like this formation, and I'm just going to apply it to this scene, which is in Oceanside, California, sort of north of me. And it's sort of like my happy place to go paint. It's atmospheric, always boats, the light's great there. But one thing that I love about these sketches, just before I get going the splatter, is just that they tell me my plan of action. The light here is this going to be my first wash, and everything in the dark is going to be my second. And the splatter is great on that first wash, and I just go nuts. And my easel here, it actually moves, and you're going to see me shifting. That way I can have both hands manipulating the paint. So that really comes in handy. And another thing I've been telling students is you have to read the paper to know what you can do with it. The paper is going to tell you what you can do, and it has to do if it's wet or moist or damp. And a lot of times you'll see, you can't see me on camera, but I'm going twisting one way or another to see, is it shiny? Is it matte? And sometimes I'll do a little test to figure out what it's going to do. And the other thing I do is I feel my brush. Like there's so many artists, you'll see them go for the water and then they'll hit it on a sponge or something. And really what that's about is just managing the water in your brush. And if you know what the paper's doing, you know how to load your brush. And so that's where we get going on that. And so a lot of times if you don't want to affect what's happening on the paper, you want to match the moisture. So that's why it's so important to know to read the paper. So splattering, I have just talking about moisture. I might as well get my paper wet. So I'm just going to spray it down. And whatever I start splattering on this right now, this just moistening it up, it takes a little time for the moisture to penetrate the paper. It doesn't go right in. It takes a little bit of time. And thank goodness we're inside. If it's really hot, it evaporates really quickly, of course, and cool, it buys you more time. And I don't know if you can see, but I do have some lines of where I want to put the clouds in. And that's going to be the fun part. So
All
this
right.
mixture I have right here is it's sort of a tea. It's the proportion is it's pretty watery. And right here is sort of a milk consistency, kind of thick. And here same kind of consistency. And I make them thick because I don't want them to move. And I'm going to start laying in this color. I'm going to try avoid the sort of like just some light areas here, and I'm going to do it by splattering. So,
Hey,
okay,
Geoff, what was
yeah.
that little bottle you just sprayed on your palette?
Oh, was it this?
Yeah.
Oh, I love this thing. It's just a clean water source, and as soon as when I'm playing when I'm painting outside, like I squirt down my palette with this thing. I don't know if you can see. It's like a mini squirt gun,
Yeah. Okay.
and yeah, it's really handy to have. Um, so I didn't even know I used it. Okay, so here we go, and I'm just going to go over the different ways I splatter. And the first one that I do is I call it finger tap, and I don't know if you can tell, but I'm going to make an arc here, and right at the base of it, I'm going to tap my finger on the thing. And another one I do is called the fling or the flop, and that's just sort of like and it releases quite a bit more. And then the next one is the finger tap.
How fun.
Yeah, well, it's about getting water onto the canvas. And so many beginning students, they don't really do this. And it's funny, it's like once you start doing this, you're committed. I
Yeah.
mean, it's you're all in as soon as this starts happening.
You can
I'm
kind
gonna
of
warm
control where you're putting it.
Yeah. Well, but that's the happy accident, isn't it? Now I'm just warmed it up a little bit. So I'm just adding some warm. Now these are reservoirs. I'm pretty flat right now. Now each one of these is a reservoir. Now this is sort of to me, sort of the fun part is I'm gonna connect the dots. So now and maybe I'm just gonna do it up here before this gets and I'm gonna add a little water. And I'm trying to avoid now the best laid plans. Remember, I was saying, like, oh, I already lost one edge up here, but sometimes, things happen, things change, but I'm just kind of connecting the dots and you can kind of see that there's some organic forms that start to happen here. And some of it I don't plan and some it's like, oh, okay, there it happens and I'm going to go with it. And now I'm sort of releasing those reservoirs and I'm just going to tilt this again. So the paint's moving a little bit. I'm going to warm this up. I just want to get a little bit warmer as I come down here, changing hue. So I can just tap some of this right in there. And I'm just going to go right through all this stuff. I'm just going to take it back so it's flowing the other way. I'm going to add a little water to soften some edges.
Really makes it look natural.
Yeah, and it's very fast. You'd be surprised. And people think like, oh, wow, you did that thing. And I'm thinking, well, it only took me a few minutes. Okay, so now I'm going to tilt this a little bit towards me. And the part that dries out is as soon as it's tilted is going to be up here. And this is where I'm going to cut in my clouds. And I could I'm just going to do a little finger tap. And it just depends I'm just watching the water and I don't have to fill it all in. And some of this, as I said, I didn't plan, some of this, this is when we're in that zone of happy accidents.
I
But I'm
wonder if you
just
could
going to
do this. If you thinned your oil paint, you could probably do it with oil.
yeah, probably. And there we go. So I'm just going to tilt it forward, let it run down a little bit. And I'm just going to change my hue of this. I'm just going to cool it off a little bit. Just put a little turquoise in, maybe lighten it up. but still pretty wet. Maybe I'm just going to take a little water out of my brush. I felt that there was too much water in it, so I'm just going to take it out just a little bit. I'm just going to go right through all this stuff. I'm just interested if keeping, and notice how I'm using a big brush, and I'm just going to go right through a lot of this detail. And if I see if there's any streaks, I'll just turn this a little bit. I might turn this other way. I might pick up some of this.
People are asking questions about your swingy thing, your easel.
Yeah, it's so easy. It's just what's it called? I'm losing my words. Uh, it's a ball head. Just gonna darken this
For a
up here.
tripod?
For the tripod, yeah. And so I just bought one separate. Now I don't like those there, but I think it's time to go in with some another color here. This is the shadow side. I think I got too much in here, so I'm just gonna take this out. And notice I'm just gonna change my stroke a little bit. And again, like here's this getting this natural. I want the water to do the work, right, for me. And it's
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 a good
kind of
way
fun.
to
You really
spend
have to
President's
watch it. It
Day.
goes really quick here. Just gonna add a few. This is meant to be my bigger space, my bigger shape here. And I think I just want to pull out some of this just to lighten it up. I want to keep that big shape. I mean, it went pretty fast, didn't it, Eric? I mean, we're sort of
It's very
flying on
fast.
this.
Yeah, it's very natural.
I know and it looks very natural. It's like, and that's the splatters doing. And I go by and I'll see there's, I have some dots here, and maybe I'll just add a little water, try and like work them in. And so, I look for edges that look abnormally like straight. Like if there's something to, because that's not, like a cloud shape. And I usually try to soften under the cloud a little bit. So this transition between the underside and it's like the backside of the cloud in my mind. And I just want that to lighten up a bit or soften. So I'm using water to soften those edges. See, this looks kind of jagged. So I might just, just hit it with some water. Maybe I'll hit it with some pigment. Okay. So, this is going to fade, right? Because it's watercolor. It's not going to, a little more variation here. Okay. And I think, as I was saying before, I want to make this, I do want to make it warmer down here. I'm just going to shift again. As soon as I see streaks, I shift this. So it's like flowing the other way. And sometimes it doesn't flow off. We got to help it. I want that moisture off of there. I don't want it just to stay on there all the time. But as long as it's going down for me, I think we're going to be okay. And if there's anything I want to stand out, I'm just going to hit it with a little more contrast. It's going to die down. It's going to fade. And like I said, I wanted to add this little Naples. I got to clean my brush. I'm always dipping my brush, always like squeezing it out. No one really taught me that. I feel like I did catch some videos of, oops, a little bit too much, other artists doing it. And I was like, oh, that's what they're. So I'm just going to add. So this is still wet. Like I'd call this very moist. And it's because I put so much on there. A lot of students don't put enough on here. But I can sort of, say if I want more, there, like I have a time period where, if I match this moisture, that'll just sort of go, it'll just fade into what I have. Okay. So looking pretty dramatic. So I like that. And I'm just going to switch down to a little lighter, like something that has a little more light to it. And going into these trees. And I'm just trying to hit the lightest lights. And I'm just going to. And the more water I use, it's really, that's what really sucks the saturation out of this. And so
Who sees
why
a face in the cloud? Go into the comments if you see the face in the cloud.
uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
I'm too close to it. I can't see it. So I'm just warming this up. And this is my shadow area. I can just cut right through that. I don't have to. These are goat hair brushes. I sort of like them. They're very
Goat,
light.
goat hair.
Um, oh, goat hair. Yeah. I'm just going to add some. This is Vertideer. It's going to mix with this just to in that shadow area. But I just want to keep this. I'm looking for little highlight places because there's all this busyness here. Right in this area. And I kind of, I'm just going to pull this. I really want the light to enter into here. Like I want like an avenue kind of coming through here so you can get into this area.
How does goat hair brush compare to squirrel or sable?
That's a great question. And I think for me, it skips a little bit more. You know how you get those little gosh, what where I used to be a cynic in Hollywood, and if you missed a little spot on the wall, you're like they called it a holiday, and so these little holiday, you can kind of see them when you do a dry brush and you go over something really quickly. Um, it'll just skip, and I think they do that really well, and they hold a lot of water. For me, I think they work better than say like this. I found because the longer it is, it has for the splattering, it'll pop back up. And for like this, I do a stabbing technique like this too, if I want to get it right in a place because anything stiff will pop back up. So I think these, I don't know, they just do a lot for me, these brushes.
Where do you get a goat hair brush?
Where did I get? Well, these are silver, and I got these Tintorettos at Jackson Art, which is a UK company.
Yeah, okay.
And
But Silver Brush makes them in the US. You can go on blick.com and get them.
yeah. Okay, so pardon me. Let's see. I'm just going to kind of go to the water and I'm just going to green it up a little bit. Okay. And and this is all light. Like this is like the sky to me is emanating light. And so when I'm going to paint this, I'm looking for the lightest value that I can see in my reference. And so I don't want to go dark yet. I want to save that. So so here, let's do some of those skips. So, and I like to change direction, but there. So, to me, it's easier to do that with this brush than some others that I've had. And this is a boat on the water here that it's it's like crowded with people. I'm just going to do a little hue shift here. Oops. It's like you do have like a little bit of time where you can take the color off if you get too much on there, like where you don't want it, just to pull it off. Always good to have something around to grab it with. So I'm just going to warm this up again. Maybe I'm going to saturate it as it's coming towards us. So and I try and mix a lot of my colors. The more water you can use, and do a bold, to me that's a bold mark. See how fast I went across the bottom, and you get some of those little holidays, those little marks. I can even just, if I want to make some open texture too in this, did you see how I splattered around this little area here?
Yeah.
And then I'll come up to it and just sort of feed into it, let it come down. I'm not sure if I want that there because it's right at the bottom, but maybe a few. And you see, if you use lots and lots of water, I think what is so interesting about it is that it's like I think of it like a s- like a storm on the surface of the earth. There's this little atmosphere of water, and there's all these rocks, different sizes, all these pigments rolling around, and they settle into the paper. I'm just going to tilt it a little more just so this runs off. I think as that's happening, I'm just going to go back into it, introduce some other water, some other hues. I think I want to take some of this color and just kind of get it in here before it dries. So it's telling me time wise, like I'm running out of time right up here maybe. So just trying to get some magenta. Maybe I'll go for some carmine. Whoa, too much. Just as if some of that cloud warmth is reflecting in, trying to just grab a little bit of some warmth. And what I liked about this image is there's parts where the wind is blowing, it gets choppy, it's like one kind of value, and then another part over here it's smooth. And so I really want to try and get some variation in values going back. So that's but that's about, I'm really about there for this. I'm just going to go in, just make a little detail here, or impression of detail, I should say, because I'm not really looking for detail. I'm really just kind of killing those whites, adding the value, getting the mother color in. Now I'm looking up here, so I get accumulation. So I just want to pick that up with my brush. And really, I can't really touch any. This is to me on that damp zone. So if I add a bunch of water, it's going to push what's already set up here and make lines. And although, let me see if I can try, because I want a little edge here. So I'm just getting clean water. So we'll just see. And that, I think I could just, so matching, I want to match that. And it's very damp. So I want to get everything out of my brush. So as it falls, it's not creating a line. I can also, if I just want to add a little, using my hand to block, add a little more moisture if I want to buy myself some time. So as long as it's wet, you have time. As soon as it gets to, that is set in there and you want to disturb it, then I think you get a natural edge in some ways. One time I had a thing done like this and it started to rain on me and the drops were hitting, it was just about this dry. And actually, to tell you the truth, it looked pretty cool. So, but I think that's I'm about ready to start drying. I'm just going to do a few more hits of this just to get some of this color down in here, just to kind of connect some of these areas, maybe even some warmth bleeding through. But I want to keep that, and I want to keep these lights. So this is what basically the first wash, and if I was looking at a value scale, it's definitely, I'm in that lighter zone. And I took a class from Jill Carver. Have you had Jill Carver on, Eric? She's an excellent instructor, and she had us break our palette down into two sections. One was light and one was shadow. And so, and basically in oil, you can always be putting, oh, I'll put some light on, I'll put, you can do both. You're sort of working both sides of that light and dark. Whereas I think with watercolor, we're dealing with light first. And so this is all my lights first. And so it's more about timing than it is about, you have a first wash and second wash. And so once this dries, I will get, my second wash going. But I think I have a hill back here, and I think that's it might be a good time just to throw in this hillside. I think it's not going to move too much. It's sort of in that damp area, that damp time. I'm going to take some verdideer, maybe even a little lavender, and I'm just going to go into this and kind of create that. And I want that to be, this hillside to be sort of soft. I want it to go back. And so I'm going to let the water just do that for me. So we're going to hit our structure. We have our light, and now we're going to go for what really is going to define the structure and detail of the painting. And the detail, I really kind of save it for this stage of it. Like, I don't start with detail. I feel like I finish with detail. And I mixed up some colors here, if you can see. And what I have, oh, that's my mic. Let me get that out of the way. I mixed several different piles, and so I don't have to keep mixing as I'm doing this, so I can kind of dip in. And I really suggest that, because if you have to stop, I want to start with a wash. I want to keep loading, and I want to do like a pathway through this. And I'll probably start on this side. I usually start high and back and go forward. But I already did this little hillside here, and I like how it's part of the sky. It's sort of in that vein of this. And so I think it's going to go in the foreground as soon as I start to put some of my darks in. I'm loaded up my hand here with the things that my tree brushes, and I can even splatter with this thing too. So I'm just going to load up this brush, and so we're going to go for it. And I do want this to be pretty defined. I think I'm going to soften over here, and I might soften over here. But this, to me, this tree here, and I would just want to check my reference, is sort of like my star of this. And I'm just going to try and, using the edge of this fan brush to kind of make the canopy, and you just create some open spaces. I don't want to copy, have anything that's, like this mark looks a little like that. So I just want to break some of this stuff up, just so I'm not getting anything that's too.
And you're painting more dry now than letting the water do all the work.
Right. Yeah. So I'm thickening it up, but I do have to come in and add water to this. And then in terms of just like the splatter, a lot of times I kind of feel like, and again, like I'm using my hand to sort of, and this is almost, I think I almost want it thinner. I want to get some little splatters. And I do the same thing up here. It's almost like repeating myself on a smaller scale, And then I'll come back, and you see I took moisture out of my brush. So I don't want to add anything. I just sort of want to just come in and just connect some of this stuff. And maybe it's like leaving it up to the gods or something, like where those little marks are going to be. And then maybe I'm just going to connect, some of these, maybe too many, make a form out of this, and maybe I'll connect that. And I might just, you can always pull a little, like at this point. And I add, sometimes I add a little water depending if light's coming down this way. Like I might just add, some variation. And the finger seems to be the quickest way to do that. And I'm just going to, okay. And so I'm just going to, coming down, letting gravity do some of my work for me. I'm just going to make what might be a trunk color. I'm just going to add some lines to it just to let that flow together. I don't want to do too many. It's really easy at this point to sort of overdo something, and I'd rather come back later and re-emphasize something than to knock it out of the park on the first go. That would be nice. But see how I call this a set and let. So I just set some water there, and I'm just going to let it kind of come into the tree. And if I need something darker, and this is a very small brush, I'm just sort of dabbing some, and hopefully that water will just kind of move that around for me. So I'm going to bring that right up to there. And yeah, let's go back to this guy. There's some other trees here, and I think I'm going to do what I call like a pre-wet. I'm just going to throw some water down. I'll spray it after, I think, not now, but And I'm just going to put a little vertideer because I want these to look a little further away. Another little canopy of trees. And I'm just going to do basically what I did there. So start heading down, you know, and, doing some natural forms. And then there's some, over here is a bunch of sailboats. So I'm just kind of doing this now so these lines can connect with those trees. I don't want to don't have to wait till later. Okay. And then I think I'm just going to make, I want it to be sort of light over here. I don't want it to get too dark. So I want to leave like a sense of light coming through those trees. And maybe right here, I want to connect those. So back to splatter. Splatter will help me out with that.
Okay. Good idea to connect your darks.
Connect it. Right. It seems like it's the only way to simple this. It's crazy. I think that's what's so crazy about plein air is look how complex all this is. And we have to take all this complexity and make someone able to read it. Okay, so I'm just kind of coming down. Good thing I have lots of, this is my sky color over here, but I'm just amending it a little bit with some cobalt violet and just coming into this boat. And I think I'm just going to soften this. As I said, I want most of the attention right here where I have all this kind of going on. And I'm just going to add a little more water there, lighten it up. I want light coming into this as well. I don't want it to be too dark. A lot of times you have to, for me, if atmosphere isn't there, Eric, I'll put some in.
Yep.
I mean, basically, like I don't want it to be, I like the atmosphere because it sort of, it makes indication possible. And if you don't get it in there, then you can't indicate. So these are just abstracting boat shapes, and I'm just going to lighten them as they come out here. And I wanted this to sort of come forward, this boat here. I might have to wait to really get it a hard edge there, but little dibble dabbling here. Anyhow, so I went here and I did like a little section. Now I'm just going to come into the roof section here. And so I'm just going to red it up a little bit. And, this is a wash, just like that was a wash. This is a wash too. Just going to go straight here. And if I don't have enough in my wash, I need to load it up again because I want it to carry through all this. So it's like the wash is going to do a journey for me. And I just have a little window here. I just want to miss there. And it's really important just to kind of get it in and leave it. Oh, I forgot the chimney. So let's put some, make a warm color. And I forgot, should be in light. So I'm going to come back to that in a little bit. I'm going to let that dry before I put the shadow in. But hey, I'll let it bleed into this. That seems good to me. Put a few. Okay, back to this. Maybe I'll start on this side. And one thing that I sort of like doing when I was just talking about like creating atmosphere, if it doesn't exist, it's like just to make some. And so what I mean by making it is just to add some water. Do a little hue shift up here. And, do a set and a let. And maybe I'm just going to take a paper towel. I'm just going to push just to open that up a bit. And so I'm guessing too. I mean, I hope that works out. If not, I'll keep an eye on it. Okay. So again, whoops. Just kind of bring that down, adding some lavender, doing some hue shifting here, kind of lightening it up. I think I'm going to start some more. I want this to move down. I want this to connect. This is that hard shadow. And I'm going to, a lot of these boats, they have canopies. And so they're not these, it's not just the boat structure, it's all that gear and stuff on top of the boats I kind of find interesting. So looking at my, I just want to look at this really quick to see what this is like. There's some windows here, but it's on the light side. Let's do a little hue shift. So just adding a few little details, and maybe I'll connect those to the actual, my shadow here. Okay, so a little verdier. And I love to add a little titanium white just for the feeling of smoke, you know. And I find these shadow, if you can open up some of these shadow spaces, they can be really, really interesting. Like my eye tends to go to those more than anything else. I guess maybe it's the contrast, but it's also the mystery of it that I think is really interesting. So here's this. I'm just going to go back into this. No, not ready yet. So I tested that, and it's still really wet. So I don't want to do this shadow part yet. I'm going to have to come back to that. So just connecting this. And this is a little further back, so I'm just going to try and dilute this a little bit more. Well, I think like most of my studio practice is it's end up like I gear it to train me for doing plein air, and I think, I don't know, it just seemed really seductive to me because I work so much in my house, and I really like getting out, and it doesn't feel like work to me anymore. I'm just going to add some palms here, and if I can, I really like to break the so this one's really bad to splatter with, by the way, something like this, because it'll whip all around, but it's so good for these expressive palms. You know, just quick little marks, you know, sort of a one go, and then you're done. And palms, they're never alone. They always have friends. So some are shorter and some are bigger.
Kind of like plein air painters. We're never alone. We always have friends.
That's right. And if you are alone, someone's going to come up and say hello, which is great. Actually, like those are some of the best experiences. I love when people are curious about what I'm doing. Okay, so, and I just want to, maybe I'll use this brush. I just want to do the mast. Just kind of warm it up a little bit. So the mast, I'm trying to get my little pinky down. I just want to bust right through there. I'm going to blue it up a bit for the rigor part. And I don't mind, you know, I mean, sometimes I turn my easel, and that's nice about these two. They turn really easy and it holds it for you. But I like kind of breaking my stroke. You know, it doesn't have to be, I like the kind of broken stroke of it. Now, one thing I really love to do too, when this dries a little bit, I use just using my finger just to, because there's rigging and all sorts of things coming down from this. And because this is all sort of wet, I kind of like to do it at this point. So I'm just going to put some lines through that, because they're going to, you know, pull through and join. And I think that'll work out pretty well. Okay, so back to, let's do this. I'm just going to go into what's next. I know it's a lot of futzing around, but it's important not to get too caught up in this and to do it quick. I'm just going to, well, I still have sort of a bead coming down. That's because I put all that moisture in here, and it's coming down, and I can just kind of go into what I think is all this stuff, all this busyness happening in the boats. And there's some, I'm going to put some bright blues in because, you know, of course they have their canopies that are blue and the masts that are hanging.
You know, we're never going to get this painting done. You know that, right?
I know.
Okay.
You know, the important part for me was just doing this because I think, and it goes really kind of quick, but I felt like this was such a nice,
nice composition. Well, why don't you come back on camera, because we're going to have to say goodbye, but
okay.
Everybody give him a thumbs up, a round of applause. And And thank you so much, Geoff. This has been wonderful. In
Oh,
case
my
you came in last or late, now you're going to be able to see Geoff in person. And Geoff, thank you so much. What are you going to do on Plein Air Live?
Oh, well, I'm going to be at a place in Encinitas called the Livenheim Colony, and I'll be simplifying a very complex tree canopy in these beautiful old buildings. Very rustic.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you for being on today. We really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure, Eric. Thank
Okay.
you.